Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. It is now Friday and went out into town to do our basic shopping and stuff. We still go into town and get certain types of meats like pork, which would be sausage products, bacon products, stuff like that, even hams, lunch meats and stuff like that, because there's some things that we just don't do here yet. But I like to go in and check the pricing. The pricing of the chicken meat has gone considerably insane right now, if you can even find it. So one thing I was looking at was just some of the flash frozen chickens that usually runs between $6 and $7 for a 5 pound bag. That is now $22 for 5 pounds in this area. That's insane. That's at a Walmart. I don't even know what it would cost at Publix and these higher end food stores, but that's what we're seeing now. And when you start looking at other things such as your ham and stuff like that, those prices has doubled. Where you used to be able to get a pound or 2 pounds for say $6, you're now looking at $12 for the same package of meat. And our gas prices here, I went and I put $50 in the tank, and that barely scratched a half a tank of gas. So that is insane how much that is going up. We're looking at the average price here is about $4.79 for 83 octane or 87 octane, depending on the station that you go to. And that is if you can even find a pump that has any left. There's a lot of signs on the pumps that are hanging up where all they have available is the 93 octane, which is over $5 a gallon. So those are going to be some things you need to watch for in the future. We live out here at the Gulf Coast, and I'm telling you, the pricing of fuel is going crazy. The pricing, the inflation of food is beyond anything I thought it'd be at this point. I know that it was going to go up and that our availability was going to go down, but when you're looking at how much this stuff is starting to cost, I don't know how people can justify paying those prices without at least attempting to grow their own food down in this area, because we may not have the best quality soil, and the prices of topsoil and things like that have gone up in this area for those wanting to garden. But you can amend that soil, and you will have to constantly amend that soil. And that's where it's nice to have these birds and things like that with our quail that actually carries the garden for the most part with fertilizer. We did switch over to 10-10-10 for some periodic fertilizing, mainly because we were not getting enough of our K value and the NPK value, so we wouldn't get enough of the K value. So that's why we went with 10-10-10. So you can use 5-10-10, things like that. But I figured we'll do it 1 week, and then about the second or third week, we'll go back out and fertilize with the quail manure, compost teas and stuff like that as well. And then we have our compost pile in the back, which is where the chicken poo and all of the bedding and stuff like that gets put into a big pile, and that gets tilled into the ground when it's not as hot. It takes about 3 to 4 months for that to really start getting safe to use as a compost. Now you can use that as a top dressing around your plants, especially if you're using a lot of the mulch, pine mulch and things like that. That's going to help keep weeds down. That pine mulch is actually going to break down into the ground, and that's really going to help your plants as well. So those are some great things to look at in the future. It's going to build your soil up a little bit too, give a little bit better quality soil so it's not packing in as tight around the roots, which is one of the issues that you can have when you have a very sandy soil. So those are some things to look into, definitely. Want to do a quick announcement for the channel. We are going to be starting our I guess you would call it the creation attempt or the creation account, and we're going to be looking at Genesis 6 starting off, and we're going to be going into some in-depth studies of ancient Sumerian culture, what the cuneiform tablets and things like that have to say, not just about creation, but about the way that mankind's DNA and things like that was manipulated in those early days, and see if that stuff lines up with the Bible. I think you'll be surprised to see how it does. But if you're interested in joining the members channel, the pricing starts at $199 on there, and that is a monthly charge, and that is just so we can weed out the people who do not actually want to hear about God messages, biblical messages. So and that's basically why we had to put it that, and that was the lowest value that I could find on the charge on that. Talk to some of our members. You'll see them in the comments. They will have special icons next to their names, and you can talk to them and see if it's worth it, in their opinion, to actually join into that. But right now, today, we've got a lot of good rain over the last couple of days in the afternoons, which has been great for the garden. We have an abundance of okra coming off, and we actually have our Georgia collard greens is what they're called. Those are actually sprouting in really nice. We took out a section of the garden that had played out, that had corn in it, and it had some tomato plants that basically they produce one time and then those would die off. So we've got a lot of other indeterminate tomato plants that are actually sowed into the ground, and we have some that are put into a container right now. Then they're being grown indoors to a certain size, and they will go outside as well. So that's going to keep our tomatoes going year round. And we replace all that with collard greens. And the main reason for sowing so many collards is not because I love to eat collard greens, but the chickens really love it, and it really bolsters the vitamins and the minerals that are in their eggs that are available to us when we eat their eggs as well. Not to mention the meat and things like that that we get from our birds, and that can be used not just for chickens but also for quail. They love the stuff. So those are going to be some things to be looking forward to in the near future. We had a question last night from one of our viewers, and it was basically what type of hen should you get for their area. So that's going to depend a lot upon what state you live in and what your climate is. So I will tell you what I know about the birds that I have. So the black Ashlarp, which is a black Australian Orpington, is basically what that stands for. The Orpington breed is very prolific on laying eggs. They typically lay, depending on the breed of Orpington, between a medium and a large egg. Now, if you're looking for those larger eggs, those extra large type eggs, I will tell you the Brahma hen is going to lay those really nice big eggs, bigger than what you're going to find in the store a lot of times, but they lay about every 2 to 3 days. Whereas the Orpington breeds typically will lay every day and sometimes miss a day and lay every 2 days. Typically, if they miss a day, the egg that you're going to get the next day is going to be a double yolk egg, what I have noticed within my own birds. So something to look forward to on that. Those birds are very hardy when it comes to heat index. Now, I would not recommend them for an area that's probably 120 degrees, which would be more of your desert type climates and things like that. I believe, just based off my research, the buff Orpington is probably going to be most acclimated to that type of a temperature. So if you live in Arizona, New Mexico, things like that, I believe buff Orpingtons are probably the way to go, and maybe Rhode Island Reds. Now, I have read that Rhode Island Reds can tend to be a little temperamental and maybe a little more aggressive than some birds, but buff Orpingtons, at least the roosters that came in with the straight run pack that I had gotten at the beginning of the year, very sweet birds, very friendly. So I imagine the hens will probably be the same. Unfortunately, I got straight run in all of my Orpingtons. My buff Orpingtons were roosters, so we had to butcher them out. They make a very large bird as far as for the meat content. You're looking at probably 7 to 8 pound hen weighed out when it reaches maturity, and between a 8 to 10 pound rooster on that. So that they get rather large. They're going to consume a little bit more food, but it would be worth it for the eggs. Now, when you start looking at the Brahma hens like what I have a Brahma hen out there, and I wanted to keep her just to see how she lays, and she lays a very large egg. It would be considered, I guess, an extra large grade A egg, and they lay about every 2 to 3 days depending on what cycle she's in. I typically get about 4 to 5 eggs from her a week, so it wouldn't hurt to have some medium layers like these black Ashlarps on hand if you need more than that per week. Our quail, they lay every single day. I know there's a lot of videos out there where they talk about they have jumbo quail or they have just the regular Cortinix quail. But understand that jumbo quail is not a breed of its own. What that is a very large Cortinix quail. It's just a quail that is larger. And you can actually take based off of size or coloring, and you can create your own breeds. So if you want those larger birds, that's the way to do it. I will tell you the food consumption based off of those is not going to be much more meat per bird. So I just don't think that it's really too important to be trying to just keep the larger birds breeding and stuff. You can turn around every 8 to 10 weeks and butcher out everything that you have grown, that you have raised up. They hit that butcher weight around week 10 for a really good butcher weight. I usually wait for about week 12. Now, if you're wanting for eggs, I have found that my birds in this area lay after 13 weeks. They start laying every day. You might get that occasional egg around week 11 or 12, but typically it's around 13 weeks when they really kick into laying. And you can, at that point, if you're just wanting to raise them for meat, you can take eggs, put them in the incubator, go ahead and butcher those out, put them in your freezer, and then the next hatch they'll be kicking off in about 8 weeks at butcher weight. So if you want to keep you some birds, just breeders, dedicated breeders, and be stocking out your incubators, you can do it that way. Now, if you're like me, you want to keep those eggs coming in, then you can do it like that. And just thin your flock as you need meat. And as you do that, when you start to see that your numbers are starting to dwindle, you can start taking those eggs and start hatching them. But you do need to have a male quail if you intend to breed. As far as chickens, if you wanting to do chickens and you just want for eggs or meat and you don't care about breeding, then you do not need a rooster at all. You don't even need one unless you intend to breed, which is what I'm going to do. But I will tell you, if you intend to keep a rooster around, you need to check your local ordinance and make sure that you can do that, because you start getting a lot of complaints from your neighbors and stuff. They're going to come in and they're going to take your flock. So that's something to look into in the future if that's something that you're interested in doing. And if you have questions about any of this stuff, guys, just feel free to kick us a message and let us know. There was a question about the lighting that we used. So I went to Walmart, and I think they're like $8 now. They were 88 cents in the winter time for the landscape lights that are solar. So I would wait for winter to pick them up. They drop quite a bit in price because they have to get that stuff off the shelves for the Christmas items and stuff that are coming in. So this fall, if you're planning on doing birds, you want to keep them laying all year, then look for those lights as well. They come on automatically as soon as it's dark. They charge up during the day. Great to have. You want to have at least 14 hours of light cycle to keep a bird laying year round. That's going to be the same for your chickens in the back as well. 14 hours of daylight, which can just be just a cheap LED light that's keeping them lit, so they don't go to sleep too early. And they will continue to lay without lights. They're going to slow down considerably and almost not lay as, it's almost going to seem like they're not laying at all. But when it comes to the chickens, I am not going to push them year round. They will lay for 4 years if you don't push your birds. Now the quail, on the other hand, I don't keep quail on hand long enough to even bother worrying about pushing them too hard on laying. I will keep them laying year round for as long as I need to. And they typically will lay 1.5 to 2 years if you keep those light cycles going all year round. So like I say, when it comes to meat and stuff, it's hard to beat quail. It's going to be a little more tender than your chicken meat, has a little bit sweeter flavor than your chicken meat too, in my opinion. There's not as much of it there, but they also don't take as much food to keep those fed. So our garden, like I say, man, it's producing really nicely. We're getting our squash and zucchini and okra now, and our cucumbers are still coming in. We moved a bunch of our cucumber plants over to the existing fence where those are at, because we had a cat that come in and destroyed 2 of my zucchini plants, unfortunately. So you have to watch for animals. They like to lay in there and get out of the sun, but that can damage your plants as well. So been running that cat out with a water hose. He no longer comes into the area, which is nice. But I just replaced it with the cucumber plants that was in a new part of the garden, and we're going to use that more for tomato plants, I believe, here in the future. And that's going to be for the tomato plants that we have growing right now in the shower. So we'll get you a video made up when we put all that in and explain what we're doing and why we plant them so deep and why we cover part of the stem. It just gives it more of a rooting area and gives you a thicker vine, so you don't have to worry about it breaking as often. I will probably be staking these, I'm sure, because they're indeterminate, which means that there is not a determined height, and these things can grow to 12 foot if you're not careful. So it's nice to make sure that you stake them, and if you have to, build some kind of trellis system for them to lay in so that those vines are not snapping as their fruit starts to come in on your tomato vines. But I hope everyone's having a wonderful day, and we are going to get off of here.